And we want to share with you right now some of what we heard earlier today. Of course, there's this partisan split, right, between Democrats and Republicans and how they view all of this. And there are the polls to tell you about as well. This is the job performance issue right now from the Washington Post, ABC News, and Ipsos. Right now, 42% of Americans approve of the job the president is doing. 55% disapprove of the job. And we heard earlier today from our U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer and also a Republican who, again, see these first 100 days very differently.
I think after 100 days, we're on the right track on a lot of those areas that were campaigned on, and we'll see what the next 100 days brings.
As America marks 100 days of the worst president of our lifetimes, let us commit ourselves to continue to struggle against this administration and to uphold the core values and principles of this great nation.
So we heard from a couple of our other federal lawmakers on social media today. Republican Representative Nick Langworthy put out a list of 100-day accomplishments of the administration, whereas Democratic Congressman Tim Kennedy put out a statement saying Mr. Trump's term has been built on confusion, cruelty, and corruption. We have two political analysts with us here tonight. On the left, Democrat Jessica Schuster. On the right, Conservative Party member and Trump supporter Russ Gugino. It's always great to get the two of you together here. And Jessica, I'm going to start with you because the poll numbers, look, the president has said that they're fake polls. Of course, at the beginning of the administration, he was praising the polls because he was doing much better. They are crystal clear across the board, no matter who's doing them, that Americans are not happy with where things are right now. How do you view 100 days in?
Yeah, I think that that's absolutely true. I want to take a nonpartisan minute to wish my grandpa a happy 85th birthday. So I don't know if he's watching or not. But back to the topic at hand, I think that, look, Donald Trump, his MO, right, is to call the media fake when it suits him and to support what comes out of polls that are favorable. I think that when you look into especially the New York Times and the Siena College poll, I thought the most telling was when they asked individuals to classify by using words what they felt this administration represented. And I think the top two words were chaotic and scary. And I think that's a really fair assessment of where we see the president now. This is an unprecedented loss of political capital in a very short amount of time.
Russ, I think according to the polls, the one issue where the president still enjoys the support of a majority of Americans is on the border specifically. I mean, the number of encounters has almost gone down to zero. I mean, there are some days where there are literally just a few dozen encounters at the border. And the administration talked about that yesterday leading up to today. Today, the focus was more on the economy where the polls aren't so well. How do you think the administration is, as everyone does, trying to spin this?
Well, with regard to the border, that's a promise made and a promise kept. He said he would take the chaos out of the border, and he has. We don't have an illegal immigration problem right now at the border. That's been fixed, pretty much fixed. And now what he's doing, of course, is going after people who have been convicted of crimes, more than 1 million, and finding them and deporting them. And that's another promise made and promise kept. With regard to the economy, I'd like to give your viewers one statistic that is very important. The regulations that have been reduced by this administration are tremendous. He's had a policy that says for every one regulation that is created by his administration, 10 have to be discarded. That has actually created a surplus of $2 billion so far in this economy. We don't see regulations showing up in terms of a number, but people who are in business, particularly small business, realize what a tremendous burden that is to take unnecessary regulations out of the economy and have an economy that has much more vibrancy. And also, with regard to the economy, we're now in the final stages of a tax break, which will be the largest tax cut in American history. That means that in addition to every single tax bracket being lowered, there's going to be no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on the interest on American cars that are made in America, no tax on Social Security. So the rhetoric on the other side that says it's all about the millionaires and the billionaires, as Barry likes to say, I would say that's just a sham. We're going to have a tax cut and a vibrant economy, and it'll probably happen by the summer.
The one thing I would mention there is we don't have the specifics of the tax bill yet. Paying for all of that is going to be the challenge, right?
Yes.
They're only willing to raise the deficit a certain amount.
You're absolutely right. And because of that, Doge, which is the bane of the other side, they think that Doge is some sort of evil genius. Actually, Doge has identified $150 billion so far of cuts that need to be made. And
I would just say that I think that's been routinely disproven by journalists who have a lot more knowledge than Elon Musk's team of 17-year-olds. I also wonder if some of the regulations the president cut were those that applied to classified information and using a skiff. Listen. We can spin this however you want. I think the first 100 days of this administration have been a real test of American institutions. And I think this is what the president promised. I'm not sure people signed up for deporting babies or American citizens, as he suggested. And I think that empty shipping ports are not going to bode well for Americans at their dinner tables. Look, the changes in the way that Americans view our American institutions will have generational impact. So the first 100 days, the first 200 days, the first 300 days, right? This might not be where you feel it. But I think for generations to come, America will feel the impact of a second Donald Trump administration.
Well, I think America is about to be transformed into an economy of great growth at every income level. And every income level is going to feel the tax cuts that is going to give oxygen and incentive to people in small businesses throughout the United States.
Let me jump in real fast. 20 seconds to each of you because that's all the time I have left. Russ, we'll go with you first. What needs to happen in your view in the next 100 days? We've been through
Well, I think the first priority for the president is to make a tariff deal. And he's very, very close to making one with India right now. India probably will be the template, and the template's going to be much lower tariffs and much higher income growth. So I think we're going to see that probably within the next 60 to 90 days.
And Jessica, as we look forward to the next 100 days, what worries you the most, or what are you looking to see as it happens?
Look, I think this is a long game for the Democrats, and I think we've learned, I never thought I'd care so much about Wisconsin state Supreme Court elections, but I think what we are seeing is we are poised to take over the House at the next midterm elections, and I think it positions us well. We have a strong bench, strong Democratic governors. We have seen them lead repeatedly, and I think that they need to continue to push back in the ways that they can, and we need to elect Democrats.
Jessica Schuster, Russ Gugino, thanks to both of you for coming in.
Thank you, Michael.
Good to see you.